But now they're so arrogant, they hide it in plain view. It's like, it'd be like President Obama being naked at the podium and saying he wasn't naked, and we're not supposed to point out he's naked. So it's some type of mind control thing where they just come out and say, yeah, we grow the opium.
Have you ever talked to Catherine Austin Fitts about this?
Yeah, the big red button.
She's got an excellent, a lot of work on the CIA, Afghani opium crops, and also, you know, a lot of these hedge funds that you read about, this came out during the savings and loan collapse. They discovered that many of the hedge funds were actually backed by the government and CIA and other organizations. So, and back in the 2008 crash, when Hank Paulson put the gun to Congress's head and said, give us $700 billion, we're going to crash the economy, a lot of people in Congress were actually short bank stocks. They used an exchange-traded fund, which was making negative bets against bank stocks. So those congressmen were actually making money as those bank stocks were collapsing. So these guys are just fully invested in the collapse, and that's why I call them suicide bankers, because they have a fundamentalist belief in capitalism as their religion, and they're willing to blow themselves up in the name of their religious belief in fanatical capitalism.
But
now,
today,
let me, before I forget, Meredith Whitney, who's a very popular analyst now, she's the one who called out Citibank a few years ago, right before the crash. She said this, quote, financial reform will cause, quote, tragic unemployment levels for an extended period of time. You see what she's saying? If you try to reform us, then the unemployment levels will be tragic for an extended period of time. That's an outright threat. That's just an outright threat coming from Wall Street. If you try to reform us, you're never going to get a job again. You know, that's just outright tyranny. I mean, what else can you call it?
You're absolutely right. Well said, Max Keiser, and they just continue to threaten. Let's talk to Tom in Connecticut. You're on the air.
Hi. Yeah, this is perfect what you're talking about. Because I did want to comment on something you said yesterday, Alex, and that was you said it was good that they were arresting the bankers in Iceland, but then you said it's okay, you know, we have the great local bankers down the street where you can get a loan for a car. But a private banker is a private banker is a private banker no matter how small they are, how big they are. They have the power through fractional reserve lending to create money out of nothing. And what we need is public credit directly through our government. We need to take the responsibility.
Well, let me say this. I mean, I'm all for state banks, but that's still a bank, and it's not going to be able to compete if it doesn't have the fractional system. And this is a very complex issue, but local banks, some are good, some are bad. The point is, we don't want the mega 6 banks in the U.S., several others globally, but there's no more than 10, any way you slice it. So just for simplicity, we don't want the mega 10 banks to have the regulatory power to scoop up the smaller banks, because then we're really in trouble. Max Keiser.
In North Dakota, they have a banking system which is sound because they passed some laws to get rid of a lot of the abuses. And Ellen Brown, who's a very fine journalist, has done a lot of work. If you type in Ellen Brown in the search engine and search North Dakota banks, it is possible to run banks in an equitable, fair way. And North Dakota, surprisingly, for people probably don't know about this, they actually have some pretty decent banks because they have decided to not try to run with the wolves and to simply get in the very simple business of...
But it's the same thing with Texas banks. They're some of the wealthiest in the country, and the Texas Banking Association has come out and said, we're not selling derivatives. We're not the big mega banks. They are dangerous. And so that's important to be friendly with regional banks to be able to defeat the big banks. And then later, if we want to change something at that level and fix abuses at the local level, I think it's great. But, Tom, finish your point.
Yeah, well, that is excellent that Max brought up Ellen Brown in her book, The Web of Debt, in the Bank of North Dakota. No, the Bank of North Dakota is a state-owned and operated bank. It is true sovereign money. We need a sovereign monetary system, not a private debt money system, what we have now, where they have the power to create money. They are like a mafia. We have to realize that the private bankers of the world are like a global mafia, and we have to stand up to them like the people of a village stand up to the mafia and run them out of town.
I agree. Tom, well said. Absolutely. Currency should be a symbol of exchange. not the actual energy. You know, it doesn't have the value. It's an agreed upon mode of exchange, and we need to get back to what we had pre-1913. Let's talk to Rachel in New York. You're on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to let you know that one of the things that has been going on lately that is not being reported is that many people up here in New York on Wall Street are withdrawing their 401ks.
Actually, I have seen that in the news. The word is getting out, but it's not a big national story because of Bloomberg and other reports that the federal government is ordering private pension funds to, quote, invest in failed banks. I mean, since when can the government order, because they have regulatory threats if they don't? See, they can selectively enforce. Max Keiser, break that down.
Right. Well, 401k accounts are the retirement accounts. People squirrel away money every month with their employer. Now, if they're liquidating those accounts, what's not being clear here is either it's because of duress and they need that money because they're going bankrupt and they have to draw down on their savings, or two, they fear tax hikes coming and the tax advantages of the 401k evaporate, so why not take that money out and put it somewhere in another institution that you don't have the same kind of risks? Now, I think what the caller is referring to is that people are removing money from their 401ks as an offensive measure, not a defensive measure, as a way to understand that they need to take more control of their financial well-being and to put what they thought was money safely put away into other alternative investments, possibly other currencies, other countries, into gold, etc.
Well said, Max Keiser. Anything else, Rachel?
No, that's all. I just wanted to say many of the people we're speaking to say they rather have their money now than wait there until they're 58 years old when it won't be there anymore. They'll take the tax hit now.
Yeah, no, that's accelerating. Good point. Let's talk to Stephen in California. You're on the air.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Pleasure to be on your show. I'm a first-time caller and kind of a first-time listener. And as a young person living in today, I become educated on your show, and you instill the passion/interest in government. And I was wondering, how a person in my position, my family has no legacy and all that, how do I get into that sort of thing?
Well, look, in high school, in college, they make it boring. It's government. It's like Alcatraz or something, or it's like some island of Dr. Moreau. It's some imaginary thing far off. You've got to be involved in government, because if you don't, it's going to get taken over by shysters, and they're going to rob the hell out of you and hire a bunch of uniformed thugs to enforce their corruption. It's called tyranny. And so we've became the wealthiest country in the world because we had a small government and we were on top of things and we allowed people to keep most of their wealth because it was their God-given right. Now we're becoming the center of evil because our wealth has been used to dominate the globe and build an empire, and no one is as enslaved as people inside the empire. And so people are waking up and deciding, I better get involved in government. Then they go get involved in government and they find that for those that did get involved, there's a fake left-right choice, which is meant to further confuse them. Okay, they follow the yellow brick road. They've gotten to the Emerald, Palace. They've gone in, and there's this big flaming head telling them, "I am the Great Oz." And the next level is going, "No, Republicans and Democrats, you're not." Toto pulls the curtain back, or the 2-year-old points out the emperor has no clothes. Same analogy, same archetype. You pull it back, and it's a pot-bellied little demon goblin back there that's scared to death of you. If we don't pull back the curtain and arrest the goblin, it's over. Max Keiser.
Well, if you go back, you see, this is a very interesting question because it's a very interesting inflection point, and especially for a young person. Now, if you remember, Ronald Reagan said, "Government is the problem." And he said this under the influence of thinkers like Milton Friedman, who believed that the market could solve all problems. Now in 2010, people are saying, you know what, the market is actually the problem, and is creating an incredible amount of problems on top of problems. So if that's true, then does that mean we're going to ask ourselves or look at the possibility that there might be some saving grace in the idea of having a government?
But here's the next problem, Max. Let me comment.
The fathers of the United States created a government. That's what they got this country started on. They didn't start with a hedge fund. They started with a constitution.
No, I agree with you, but again, to expand on that, Under the Constitution, Congress controls the issuance of currency and credit, not private bankers. So the confusion is going to be with the public. You're going to have the private bankers pose as the solution with a type of regulation that is only going to empower them even more. So how do you get past that?
Well, first, so my question is, there's a lot of rhetoric, and especially in the libertarian camp, that government has nothing to offer. And, you know, I think that is a self-defeating position. There has to be some role of government, first of all. So the government, therefore, does not become a dirty word. There is a role for government. That's step number one. Step number two is, as you say, yeah, well, it's all in the Constitution. They recognize gold and silver as the only constitutionally recognized form of money and currency. If that's true, then all of the fiat currency, fractional reserve, derivative market scamming that's going on has to be taken completely out of the system.
Yeah, we've got to go back to the Constitution.
That's right.
Stay there.